Okay, can you hear me now? Let me know. All right, yeah, I had some weird mic thing happening. Good. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I logged in and like I said, I had some weird mic volume audio issue here. So appreciate you hanging on there. Just one of those things, I guess, just logging in, logging back out kind of took care of it. All right, so I kind of have to repeat myself here again. Welcome, Raymond. Welcome to week 3. And oh, you know what? My dog got a hold of something here. His toy, and I don't want him to be very, very loud. So let me go ahead and put him away, and we'll get started here. Just give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. I guess the disadvantages of working at home when you have a dog. But anyway, as I was saying, welcome to week 3. This is the halfway point for the mod here in this class. So hopefully you guys are in a good spot going forward. I know I had a lot of you guys more in one section than the other, still waiting to get your project 2 work in. So make sure you're getting that in as soon as possible this week, so that you can get the feedback that I'm giving to you and making those necessary changes to go forward with your week 3 work. So as we go forward here, a few things, just like you guys should know by now, discussion posts need to be in. Your initial posts are due before midnight on Wednesday. It doesn't say Wednesday there for some reason. The assignment and assessment is due, and that doesn't say Saturday either. It's really weird. It doesn't have the actual date. So discussion initial posts are due before midnight on Wednesdays, and then make sure you're responding to your peers before midnight on Saturday, and your assignment and assessment 3 are due before midnight on Saturday. So we are pretty privy to that. I know we don't have too many people in here. I think just Raymond's the only one I can pick on today right now. So do you have any questions so far? We will also have some time at the end here too, but is there anything that I can answer quickly here before we get started? No questions. Okay. Like I said, I'll open it up to critique, and if you guys want to, if anybody else comes in here too, wants to share their work, we can do that at the end. All right, just checking in for week 3 live lecture 1. We will be also meeting tomorrow at the same time, so just kind of an FYI. If you need extra help, this is, you know, if you can get in here for the live lecture, that's probably the best way to go about getting that extra help, because we will have some time to share screens and I can help you with any questions that you have. We're going to go over your discussion 3 today. We're going to talk about grids. You kind of were doing this last week in your discussion in terms of researching different grids, so we'll go over some of that. And then I will start into your assignment 3. We'll do an overview and demo. And then tomorrow, we'll be doing your assessment 3. I'll do an overview and demo of that. So if you want to hang on, if you're, waiting for more information on the assessment, you might want to wait until you hear the lecture tomorrow. All right, so let's get started here. This is a nice little quote here by Soul Boss, and he says, "Design is thinking made visual." It's actually pretty. That's a pretty good quote. Very simple to the point. So we're basically visually communicating to people, and it's not just about one message. It can be like what you guys are working on with your publications, just having that organized look and structure and unification of your article pieces, that help the reader kind of flow through an article. And also, not only is it functional, but it should be aesthetically pleasing too. So it should you should be drawing the eye of the viewer into your story as well as organizing the information. So some things to think about when you're designing your pages. It's not all just about the factual information and how it flows. That's really important, how you organize it. But also don't forget about the side of making it balanced and aesthetically pleasing as well, because that's important too. Because then it would be boring, so think about that. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at, oh, Raymond, you said Netflix came out with a documentary called Abstract. And they do one on Paula Scheer. Cool. She says, in it, the design is play. I love Paula. Have you ever researched? I mean, I guess you saw that documentary, so you probably know more about her now, but I remember researching her more in my graduate studies, being very inspired by her. But yeah, it's true. Yeah, she's very, very inspirational. Hmm. She does a lot of wayfinding too, like just like signage design displays. Hmm. Design is play. It's all part of the experience too. If you have think about it, if you have a really good experience somewhere, you remember it and it becomes memorable. Now it could be a bad experience too, but we're hoping for more of a good experience. So design can, you can have a goal for your overall concept of it being memorable, the experience. Yep. Yep. Because the more memorable it is, like say a brand or a message, obviously the more recognizable that brand will be, the product, brand, or message. So it can be also, it should be about the experience. Yeah, very cool. I'll have to, I wonder if there's an introduction on that. Do you know what that's called, Raymond? What that documentary was called? Oh, Abstract? Is that what you said? Okay. Let me write that down because maybe I can find like a little intro to it on YouTube. And we can put it in announcements. Take a look at that. Thank you for sharing that. Very cool. It's always cool to get like inspiration outside of the classroom, like TED Talks and Netflix, like you said, just about design and how people think. Cool. Yeah, it's great. Oh, I forgot to mention too. If you want to link up, I have, and some of you guys might have done this already, I created a professional Facebook page for sole purpose of, just kind of reaching out to you guys in a different way. So if you want to look me up, just my first and last name, sync up with me there. I'm trying to get it up and started as far as posting more stuff. I just started it recently, so we can also share inspirational stuff there as well. Yes, yep. So some of you guys are on there. And like I said, I just started this. I haven't really done too much with it yet, but I will. But feel free to share stuff too. I'll be inspired by one another. All right, let's talk about grids. Before we actually get, before we get into our discussion, let's go ahead and talk about our grids, just because we talked about this last week. Just do kind of like a little review here. And it's important to go over this because this is what you're doing all in this class as far as doing some type of grid structure in your magazine. So the purposes of grids for this purpose is important. And what they are is basically, and it's pretty common knowledge here, they're a series of intersecting axes that create horizontal and vertical divisions of space on a page. They also allow for placement, interaction of visual elements, creating a movement across a layout. You know now that grids can be simple or complex depending on the content. And they're really not meant to be restrictive. They can be modified to fit content as well. So you're kind of, as you're placing in your images and your text, you should be kind of playing around with the different grid structures. So knowing this, the functions of a grid, why we use them, especially with magazine work, anything with a lot of information, it could be web design as well. We use grids to control information, control where everything's at, organize, create a rhythm, a harmony, a unity, across the whole magazine and articles, if you kind of want to zoom in on that. Readability, it helps with that because if you have a lot of text and elements and imagery, organizing that is important. Grids can also create movement, balance, direction, contrast, interaction, and order. So there's a lot of benefits and functions of grids, why we use them. And they're primarily, like I said, used when you have a ton of information because, if you don't have it under control, you don't have it organized, and it's all over the place, obviously it's going to be chaotic and people aren't going to want to look at it. It's going to be hard to read, hard to look at. So there's definitely a function and purpose for it. There are different elements in a grid that we talk about, and some of these you probably know of, but maybe the names aren't too familiar, maybe not, maybe. But let's go over the terminology here. So, so that when I'm giving you a critique, if I say columns or if I say flow lines or grid modules or margins, you guys know what I'm talking about. So columns, gutter widths or column intervals, flow lines are rows, grid modules and margins are what we're going to look at here in a second. So when I talk about margin, now this could be, it doesn't necessarily have to be the outer edge of your layout per se. This, I had some of you guys, do those pull quotes in a box, and I would make mention to, create more margin space. So basically, when you talk about margins, they're the active area of a page or space, and they direct the viewer towards the visual elements. They can vary in size depending on format as well as content. Folios and footers may be placed in the margins. You guys should have done this with your folios. Margins are not intended to trap content. They are instead used to activate the positive spaces in a layout. For layouts with large amounts of text, books, for example, large margins are ideal as they provide breathing space. So this is a nice balance. How do you know if things are too close and not enough margins? That's a good question. I would say as far as like spatially, it's for a layout of an 8.5 by 11 page, I would go no less than 1/2 inch. I would go about 3/4, just because that's typically what people use in a lot of magazine design. It's just a nice ratio of white, or I want to say white space, but you get what I'm saying. It doesn't necessarily have to be white. Just the negative space there to balance the information that's in the margin space. It's just a good ratio visually. Now, if you're talking about just all text, like a book that you open up and it's just all text in it, like a novel or something, you might have a larger margin, maybe 1 inch, because you have more information and it just allows the line lengths not to be so long. Yep. Yeah, it's all relative to the space that you're working into. I always like to tell everyone that I talk about when we talk about margins is think about, especially on a poster, think about all that information that's inside that margin space, how important that inside space becomes when the margin spaces are bigger. So think about it like a photograph that you have, say if you mounted it on the wall and you had a nice margin space around it, like a little white frame area around it. The bigger that frame section is, the more important that information on the inside becomes, if that makes sense. You're putting more importance on that information on the inside or the image. So it's a nice balance of space. It's kind of what you're doing visually. Now columns, when I say, oh, columns, adjust your columns, they're basically the vertical divisions of space used to align visual elements. They can be single, multiple columns and can be used or interchanged. The quantity and complexity of information determines columns. Newspaper columns, you might have, just like this example here, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 column grid. And it's smaller columns because your newspaper is bigger, the paper is bigger and longer. So it's all relative to the paper size, in that regards. But that's what columns is, if I'm saying, adjust your columns. Gutter width, I noticed maybe 1 or 2 of you guys have issues with this. As far as the spatial balance of this, maybe it not being wide enough. So when I say gutter width, that means that's the negative space that separates one column from the next, and it prevents text and images from clashing. You want, again, just like margin space, you want a nice space in between your columns of text called gutters. You don't want it too close. You don't want it too tight, because then what happens is the information becomes harder to read. Everything becomes it kind of just all runs together and it clashes. So, having that breathing space, that white space is really important. The gutter is super important as well. We talk about flow lines. They're basically support for vertical columns by dividing the page into horizontal intervals to provide additional alignment points across the grid. So you can see those flow lines are being shown here. They're the blue lines going across horizontally. They dictate the horizontal positions of a visual element and how they rise or fall along columns. And they're all about consistency. You have to be very consistent with those. Flow lines kind of break up the space so that you can figure out where to put imagery and other design elements and possibly text, like headlines. Modules, when we talk about modules, they're basically spaces created by columns, rows, and margins that support text and visuals. Content will determine the amount of active modules, and they can be used for consistency as well. And it's okay to leave modules empty as negative space to balance design as well. Here's a really nice visual to kind of explain each one of these terms that we just talked about. So you can see on the upper right left-hand corner it says columns, and that's represented by the little orange, filled in orange square there. And you can see it on the page where that column is. Modules is the darker orange spot. That's kind of what that's referring to. Margins is the blue all around the layout. Flow lines are the horizontal lines, again, the blue line there. And then we also didn't talk about spatial zones. Those are groups of modules or columns that can form specific areas for type, ads, images, or other information. Don't forget, you could also have ads in there. We didn't necessarily have any as of yet, but you can have a spatial zone that's designated just for an ad. Yep, yeah, remind me before we're done here, because I'll forget. Actually, I'll take a screenshot and I'll put that on my desktop and then I'll remember. There we go, okay. Yeah, I just have like a million things going on in my mind right now. All right, I will do that. Yeah, it's definitely a very nice visual here. Markers, they're the little X down there. They basically help you navigate a document indicating a placement for material that appears in the same location. They can include page numbers, running heads, footers, and headers and icons. So depending on what you have down there, and you guys should have that in there already anyway. Here's another visual too, showing the same thing just in a different way. I think here you can see the gutter, and I could probably post this too. Let me take a picture of this, remember. There we go. So it's nice to see it visually. I know I'm a visual person too, so I can see terminology like the verbal part, but it's nice to also see the visual part of it. So it's good to familiarize yourself with this terminology. And that's why you're going to school, is to become knowledgeable of this terminology. So when you speak to clients or speak to me or other people, other designers, you sound intelligent. You know you are because you're using those words, and you know the meaning of them, the vocabulary. Okay, so modular grid is a one grid structure you guys were probably discussing last week. Modular grid, let's talk about each one of these. It's pretty much same as a multiple column grid with the addition of flow lines. They are the active areas of the page that accommodate visual elements. And they're good for complex applications such as magazines and newspapers. So modular grid can look like this. This one has 4 columns, and an image or text block can occupy one, as you see here. So this would be an example of a modular grid. There's also a single column manuscript grid. I hear my clock here. Basic structural system. It's good for producing large amounts of text, like books. In this grid, margins are the only consideration. We just talked about that. This is the most basic page structure in the single column grid. And then it says here, in this double page spread, the inside margins are wider than the outside. Why do you think that is? Why do you think the inside here is wider than the outside margins? Can you take a guess? Hi, Christina. I didn't see you log in here, sorry. Nobody wants to guess here. It's okay. It's because the spine is in the middle. So if you think about it, when you're reading a book, usually it's a lot of pages, right? So when you're opening that book, the spine takes a lot of that curvature of the space there. So when it's wider in the middle, it's almost like it equals out to the length of the outside margins once it's open. So you're kind of balancing that space out a little bit with that knowledge of having that bind kind of being there. You also have the multiple column grid. This contains multiple spatial intervals. We just talked about that. Very flexible grid, allowing for a range of visual elements. Great for complex projects like magazines. That's okay. Newspapers and publications with diverse content. Rhythm, movement, and tension can be developed through the interaction of visual elements in multiple column grids. So this is an example of a multiple column grid. Oh, good, Christina, good. There's also one called the hierarchical grid, and this is based on intuitive placement of elements rather than regular repetition of intervals. It's an organic approach to using grids. Alignments change depending on content, but remain proportionally integrated. And web pages are good examples of what hierarchical grids can be like. So here's a good example of a hierarchical grid that a website is utilizing here. There's also alternative grids, and these are more loose and organic as well, rely heavily on intuitive placement, and most alternative grids rely on a dominant visual element, a focal point to help align other elements. Develop spatial relationships through the push and pull technique is what alternative grids basically do here. So this is the alternative grid example on the top. You can see that grid structure being placed in a sketch, and then on the bottom is showing how that plays out. These are really for a lot of more design-like layouts. So you wouldn't use this in a more conservative, for a conservative brand or company. You know, this would be more for like a art museum or like a design magazine or something like that. Okay, any questions about that? Just a little review of grid structures and just kind of going over the terminology that defines a layout as far as margins and the vocabulary that we talk about when we talk about a magazine layout. Okay. We didn't go over the discussion yet, so let me go ahead and click on week 3 here before we go forward, just to see what our learning objectives are this week. So week 3, you guys are going to have a self-critique session. How exciting, in your discussion this week. So you're going to kind of think about the effect principles of design have on your design by listing a minimum of 5 ways to improve a layout, your layout, for example. We'll go over that in a second. Differentiate between effective and ineffective grid use when communicating with the end user. Research and identify proper techniques to convert print media into web media. You know, a big deal when you're dealing with print is typically when you're designing for someone, more likely than not, if it's a print ad, you're going to probably be converting it to a web ad, just because that's just how it is. Or it could go the other way. It could be a web ad at first, convert it into a print ad. So knowing kind of how to do that is important, and is something that we're going to be doing in your assessment this week. Identify the similarities and differences between print and web layout strategies. So it says this week you will design a full page advertisement using a clearly structured grid that will persuade the consumer to purchase the product or service based on the information presented in the ad. You guys will have a good time with this, I think. There's a little inspirational video down here just about design thinking you can check out. But this is basically what you guys should be walking away learning this week here. So it's a nice little review. And I accidentally clicked on that. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and go into your discussion here. See if you have any questions. Some of you guys may have started this. If not, no big deal here. So this is all about show, tell, and learn. So basically what we're going to be doing, and you can read through the background here, it's just talking about the critique part of our process here as designers. Critique is huge. This could be just you showing someone in your office, maybe your design team, other designers around you, maybe a production manager, somebody that you will trust to kind of give you a another pair of eyes to give you kind of their take on it and feedback. The critique that you have, you know, obviously you want constructive criticism. So you're not going to say things like, when you guys look at this in discussions, I don't really want to see you guys being subjective. I don't want you guys saying, well, I don't think this works because I don't like the color red. Or I just don't like it. It's not, you know, something more subjective where it's your opinion. What I want to see is you guys being more objective when you guys critique yourself and your peers. So give facts. Go back to the design principles if that helps. Talk about the elements used in design. And then say why you think it works and why you think it may not work using those facts. Okay, so read through this, kind of gives you a good idea of what I was just talking about. And you're going to have 2 parts to this, just by, you know, kind of FYI, but I think you guys will enjoy this, and I think you'll get a lot out of this too. Okay, so the prompt says, picture this. You've worked hard and put a lot of thought into every design decision to create a layout you think is amazing. You're confident your designed solution is creative and meets the client's expectations and will resonate with the target audience. Now it is time to present your solution to the client and other members of Acme Media Group creative team. You walk into the meeting, confidently show and explain the design solution, and receive feedback that is not clear or helpful. At best, you are feeling confused and left wondering how you hit or missed your project goals and objectives. How can you avoid this situation? As a designer, it's important to present your work and explain your design decisions so you can receive the right kind of feedback. All right, and this definitely happens in the real world here. So this is good that we're kind of looking at this. Part A, for this discussion, you will self-critique your multi-page feature article. Feature article, okay? So not the editorial, the 4-page feature article. And you're gonna embed your design. If you cannot embed it, I've had a couple of you who had issues with that. If you can absolutely not embed it, just attach it as a PDF. But we would rather you embed it because we can see it and don't have to worry about clicking on it to download it. But if if you can't get to that point, I would rather you have it attached than nothing at all. So you're going to embed it into the discussion board for feedback. If you have not completed the week 2 multi-page feature article, choose a project from a previous course and embed the design into the discussion board for feedback. So if you haven't gotten to the week 2 work yet, you haven't finished it, post something that you've done before in another class. Your goal is to help the client and other creative team members understand your design process. For your initial post, explain your work using the criteria below. So this is what you'd be answering here. What design problem are you trying to solve? How does your design solve that problem? So what is the problem that you're trying to solve? What do you guys think a good answer to that is? For this particular, if you're doing your, if you are posting your feature story, what is the design problem that you can list here? I just want to make sure we're clear on what that means. A design problem is usually what when you no, it's more like what you're tasked with. So somebody came to you and asked you to do this magazine, and you were to create this magazine and feature story. And this feature story, the design problem is that you have all this information and you need to organize it somehow in a more interesting and visually organized way. So talk about the grid structure you decided to use. Did you decide to do a manuscript? Did you decide to do a, talk about that? Yep. And the flow of information. So that's what they talk. The design problem is different with every project. So if you were tasked to redesign a logo, your design problem would be to revise the logo based on past information to create something that is more, updated and pleasing, the whole principles of an effective logo design. Memorable, versatile, simple, appropriate, all those words. Yep, so the grid structure, principles of design, hierarchy, text, visuals. Exactly. Well, I was just saying in relation to another project, if you're working for instance, on a logo instead of a magazine design, your design problem would be that, what your design problem would be is redesigning this logo so that it's more meaningful, more simple, more versatile, more appropriate. Yep. So that's what that means. I know sometimes that's a weird question, like, what are they talking about? I would have assumed, yeah, there was problems with the actual magazine itself, but no, the design problem is what the client comes to you for. So a feature story, for instance, can be a story that another writer comes to you with the story and the visuals to make it look visually appealing and stuff like that. So, yep, exactly. So how does your design solve that problem? That's where you come in to say, this is what I decided to go with. What type of grid structure would be an example of that. Okay. Part B, so we're going to kind of talk about that. Part B, during the discussion, you're required to make 2 follow-up posts offering constructive feedback. If possible, respond to a classmate who has not received a response to their initial post. The more involved and engaged you are in this process, the more opportunities you will have to improve your work. For each follow-up post, critically analyze the design and offer a minimum of 5 ways the effective use of principles of design can improve the layout. That's a challenge, right? But I think that'll be great because not only will you're going to gain so much from this because you're going to look at other people's work and see maybe certain things that you did or want to do that you need to correct or want to share with other people, and then they can learn from you. They can say, hey, that's a really great idea to change this, and then you just improve upon your work. Now, just a little tip too, when you critique the work, it's always good if you start out with a positive. So, talk about something that you liked, with a fact, have a fact behind what you liked. And don't just say, I really like that, it looked really nice. Say why you liked it, what's working. But if you're going to follow that up, if you're going to say anything negative, have the negative after the positive. Kind of do it a sandwich way, so it'll be positive, negative, positive. And the negative shouldn't be like, I didn't like this, is stupid, it's not going to be subjective. It's just going to be, if you see something that's not working, say you don't see any of the body copies not aligning. Just say, I noticed that the baselines aren't aligning. This is something that you might want to look at, and then at the end, say, but I think you did a great job overall. I think, just by looking at this, maybe I can do something similar to whatever you have going on here. So end it with a positive. That is a nice way for somebody to look at that, look at your critique, and learn from it and not be put off all of a sudden. Because if you start off with a negative, and then maybe that's the only thing that you say is a negative, just a criticism, then they might be put off a little bit. So it's always good in how you say it too, just like with anything. Does that make sense? Here's an example here too. If you are struggling with how you would pursue and approach this discussion, there's a nice little example that was actually done by a student that's reflective of a work. And when I say a work, I mean passing. So here, one of the design examples here, one second, I'm moving my computer here. One of the design problems that I had to solve was the use of a grid structure to create a consistent design. I also wanted to present the future article in a way that was visually appealing to the reader, but did not want it to be confused with and appear to be the same article as the editorial article on the opposite page. And they actually cited something in there too. So there's an citation in there. To solve this design problem, I evaluated my ideas, and by sketching a few thumbnails to define my grid structure, used throughout the magazine. Defining the grid structure on the master pages allowed me to strengthen the principles of design. And then they followed up with another paragraph with a citation. They allow you to lay out a design for each page once and reuse it as many times as needed. I probably would have a little bit more with that citation. It's a little vague there. But they followed it up by saying, I found the master pages helped to define the overall look and feel I wanted for the magazine. It allowed me to define columns and margins for each page to achieve consistency throughout my document and design. So that's really good because it talks about a lot of different terminology that we went over, has citations in there as well. Plug my computer in here. So that's a good way to sum that up there. That's okay. If you want to write longer, hey, go for it. Seriously. There's a minimum requirement, but that doesn't mean there's a maximum. So, okay, here's another one. Oh, sorry. Another one here in sample 2. I like to see some of you go, obviously I like when you guys go over and beyond because I can tell that you guys are into it and inspired, which is great to see. So don't feel like you're, doing something wrong. Christina. Okay, this particular student said, the design problem I tried to solve with my magazine spread was choice of typography to improve readability. The choice of fonts can have a major impact on overall professionalism your magazine conveys, and that's a citation to support that, design problem. I changed the body copy to and then they say what they did to improve upon this. I changed the body copy to a serif typeface to improve readability. To improve readability, I explored increasing leading or space between the lines of type. I found that bad leading made the text harder to read because my eyes had trouble locating the next line to type in the article. I guess there I would probably change it to bad leading to maybe leading that wasn't working because it was too close together. But they did a great job with that first paragraph for sure. And then they go on to say, I also experimented with bold formatting to increase and strengthen the contrast between headline, subheading, and body copy. This also improved readability. The drop cap used to start the feature article was a great way to grab the reader's attention because it was used to enhance visual hierarchy and brought attention to the beginning of the article. I also used paragraph styles to maintain a consistent look and feel throughout the article. Okay, so those are two great examples from students that got A's on their discussion post. But I think it's all relative to what you're doing too. So definitely bring up those the design problems that you're trying to solve and how you solve them, and add those citations in to support your perspective. Any questions about that? Is that pretty clear? What you guys need to do? You guys can gain so much from this too, because I'm giving you guys feedback, but now you guys can get each other's feedback. So what I would suggest you guys do, and really highly suggest you do, is go through the feedback that I gave you from last week. If you submitted it on time and I gave you feedback, which I should have gotten everybody last night who submitted in and gave feedback to, make those changes before you post it to the discussion. Yeah. So make those changes that I suggested. Don't just go ahead and post what you already submitted. Make those revisions. And then what I would suggest is I would just do like screenshots of it. That will give you kind of like a lower res file to deal with too. Let me open up one of my document here. Hold on 1 second. So let me share my screen. For the feature article, you're just dealing with 4 pages. This is what I would do. I mean, you can actually, let me see if there's an easier way to do this. I'll say you can export it as JPEGs too. I'm just going to do a Shift Command 4 and make screenshots of page 3. And I would pull this up, your double page spread. So you got 3 and then this is 4, 5. Command Shift 4, go ahead and take a screenshot of this one. And then screenshot page 6. So you're only dealing with your feature article here. Okay, so you'll have 1, 2, 3 screenshots. So when you go to the discussions, go ahead and change this over here. Let's pretend like I'm you. Discussion 3. You can then embed your images in here. What you'll need to do is add them to your files. Mine's going to look a little different than yours because I'm obviously an instructor. Oh, there you go. Good. I'm glad I caught that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times I'm just telling you, like, look, if I see 1 orphan or 1 widow, I'll say in my feedback, you know, change any orphans or widows, because sometimes I don't catch them all either. So just double check. You know, sometimes I will point them all out, but sometimes I don't. So just kind of make sure you're kind of mindful of that. I'm going to go right into images. And I'm just going to go ahead and upload 1, 2, and 3 that I just saved in here. And I'm placing them in my files. You might have different, it might look different for yours. Yeah, if you have any, yeah, Raymond says if you have too many files in there, it may not let you embed them. He had an issue with that. So you might need to either, you know, obviously get rid of some that you don't need to open up more space. Okay, so then you're just going to click in here. Thank you, Raymond. That's actually a good tip to bring up. Go ahead and there's a, and let me zoom in here. Right here it says embed image. It's like a little landscape portrait shot. And then click on Canvas. Yours might be a little different than mine. Just remember where you put yours in your folder. I'm going to go to my images folder. I know I put mine there. And in here, I just named mine 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to go update. Places my first one, hit return. And you can make this smaller. Just don't make it too small. I'd probably say like right here, just so we can see the details. Canvas, go back, do it again. This time you're going to grab number 2. And I just renamed them so they're easy to see in here. And the that's fine. I'm going to leave that size the way it is. Then go back to Canvas again. And then find my third one. And then again, you can resize this. That happens to you. This small here. There we go. Okay, so then you would just post, hey, the beginning of that. Here is my feature story. And then you might want to go in and do your post example. I'm gonna actually just post this just so you guys can see the example here. Yours is gonna be a little different. You're gonna kind of answer the prompted questions. I'm not doing that in here. I'm just kind of quickly saying this is my example. So those of you can see how I would paste it in here. So you would definitely put in your initial post and before posting your examples. But you can see, you know, I may not be able to really read this real well, but you can at least see if there's any issues with the rag, which is the, you know, your body copy edges. You can see the elements pretty well without straining the eye or having it too big in here. And it's quick and easy, so you don't have to click on it to download it. Thank you, Christina. A lot of practice there. Okay, any questions about that though? And that's how you would embed that. So it'll be in here. There's another student's post in here. Okay. Very good. All right, so hopefully you guys will benefit from that discussion going forward. And like I said, try to revise your feature story based on the feedback I gave you before posting in there. All right, I'm gonna get a quick 5-minute break here and then we're gonna get started with your assignment 3. Sounds good? Sound good, sound good? Your assignment 3, I think you guys will definitely enjoy this because it's a little bit more creative. All right, I'll meet you guys back here in about 5 minutes. All right, can you guys hear me? All right, let's get started here. Hopefully you guys can hear me. All right, cool. All right, so let's go ahead and read the details for our assignment. So we can get started on that. Like I said, I think you guys are going to enjoy this. Gives you a little bit more creative freedom here. Okay, yeah, I think he's on a phone call, so he just private messaged me here. Oh, Randy, no, Randy. Who's Randy? Christina. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about Raymond. I thought you misspelled his name. I gotcha. Can you hear me now? That's funny. You're like, how did you know that? All right. My mic is weird. Let me turn up. You know what? I think I cover my mic, okay, with my hands sometimes when I'm on my computer. So I apologize. I'm going to try and be more aware of this here. I might be having mic problems. In the beginning of this lecture, I was having issues. So, all right, hopefully that'll not happen again. Okay, so basically what you guys are going to be doing, read through this background for this assignment. You guys are going to be basically creating a full page ad for the back of your magazine. So the page 8 is where this will be being placed. Think about the back cover is prime real estate for ads. That's where you get the heavy hitters. So, you know, brands that have the most money or want to spend the most money for the most, you know, exposure. The back cover is prime spot. So you want to make it look like it's a back cover. If you want to take a look at other magazines that are kind of in your same genre, you might want to do that so you can see kind of who would advertise within a magazine of yours. It has to be appropriate, obviously, it has to relate. It can be any type of brand that you make up, but it cannot exist right now. So for instance, you can't create an ad for Target or a product that already exists or a service that already exists with a brand that already exists. This is your time to be really creative and create a brand that you want to promote for the back cover of your magazine. It has to be appropriate for the magazine. Create a logo. It can be simple, it doesn't have to be crazy. And then obviously the ad. So what is your ad going to be? Is it going to be promoting a product, a service? Some things to think about. How are you going to persuade someone? So these are all things that you need to kind of think about before you start attempting your ad. Researching, like I said, and getting inspired by what other people have in their magazines is a good start. Now, a full page ad, it should be simple. There should be a focal point. It shouldn't be a lot of type. There should be a call out, you know, at the end or at the beginning. Yep, you can use outside images. Yep. I get a lot of students that misinterpret this, and I know they're not listening to the lecture because I always say this. I will see a lot of students promoting the actual publication. So they'll use the magazine publication name, almost as if, and you know, certain magazines do this, but I want you guys to do a completely opposite brand, not connected to the magazine itself. Okay, so let me read through this prompt here, and then I'll kind of give you how I would approach this project, give you some ideas, and we'll go from there. Okay, so whether you are advertising a new product or service, creating an advertisement can persuade the consumer to purchase the product or service based on the information presented in the ad. With magazines, it is possible to target a specific target audience. If an advertiser has a product or service to promote, they may choose magazine advertising because many magazines have a large circulation that targets a specific demographic. A designer who can differentiate between effective and ineffective grid use when communicating with the end user will be able to create an advertisement that attracts attention, communicates through the arrangement of design elements, and persuades the consumer to purchase the product or service. So for this assignment, you will design a full-page advertisement using an effective grid structure that will be placed on the back cover of your magazine. Carefully choose a product or service that targets your magazine's audience. Your assignment instructions are in the 8-page document that you set up in week 1. You will be using page 8 for your full-page advertisement. Create a grid structure that effectively communicates with the end user, and of course, apply the principles of design. So think about contrast, think about repetition, alignment, and proximity, as always. Your required design elements are a headline, 1 visual image minimum. Doesn't mean you have to use just one, but that's the minimum. Body copy, this should be simple, nothing heavy. Advertiser's name, logo, create a simple logo, and contact information. Okay, now just to give you a heads up, for assessment 3, which we'll be looking at tomorrow, you guys will be converting your print ad to a special web ad, a specified, and let me go back to that so you can see the sizes in here. It's always good to look ahead here. The assessment 3, we'll go over this tomorrow, but if you look in assessment 3, you can see that you'll be converting it to a specific size. So think about that, because some of these sizes, and you might want to go into Photoshop to see what these sizes are. We'll look at this tomorrow. You don't want a whole bunch of body copy or even a whole bunch of elements in the ad. You want to keep it simple because this needs to be scaled down at some point to be converted for smaller web ads, okay? So you'll be doing 2 different sizes, a half page and a large rectangle. Just keep that in mind. You should always keep that in mind when you're designing ads, because typically you don't just use them for one purpose, you know. Okay. So you can use outside images. Christina was asking about that. You can be as creative as you want. The only thing you want to avoid is using a brand that's already out there, and you don't want to use the actual publication logo. Okay. So what I would do is, say if you had the Fit Me magazine, I would go ahead and look up fitness magazines. Back covers, or even just, you know, you might even want to just go to your local, you know, I don't know if you guys have Barnes and Nobles. I mean, even your grocery store, you might find fitness magazine. Just flip it over to the back. Of course, these don't have a back cover ad. You might just research what's in there. Some of these you can actually click on and go to the back page. They're more of like a digital version of that magazine. I don't see anything that's coming up here. There's like old ones here. Here's one, might be back page of here. On that one, do a little digging. You can even just put full page ad. That might be a little bit better, because it's, you know, I think it's a little easier seeing that than a back page ad. But look, you know, take a look at some of these ads, who they're targeting in this Fit Me magazine. You have clothing brands for this fitness line. You have equipment, you know, exercise equipment that you can promote. You can promote supplements. you know, drinks. You could promote services, you know, like training services. So just different things that you can think about that might, you know, obviously that would be relative to your magazine. So I would definitely look at a relative magazine based on, you know, who you're targeting in your magazine itself. And then what you want to do is think of what the brand would be called and design a logo. It could be simple. It could be as simple as a word mark where it's just the name of it and you're just using a typeface to differentiate it from all the competitors. Then you want to decide, okay, what's the focal point image going to be? Now, pixabay.com is a great resource for high-res images that you can search that are royalty-free. And you probably have heard of this before. So if you're doing a fitness magazine and say I wanted to do maybe a yoga service for my ad, I can just type in yoga and I can search through some really cool images based on that service and decide which way I want to go. You might want to think about what that product and service is all about and how you're going to implement that within your ad before looking for an image. You might want to look for an image first and be inspired by that and go forward. It's all your process because this is kind of where it's a little vague because a client isn't necessarily coming to you. You're creating this client, this brand. So I wouldn't say not client, but brand. So it's a little different how you approach this. It's up to you and your processes and what you're comfortable with. You can start out sketching it out on paper. You're looking at images and then going from there. Yeah. Yeah, like you can go real abstract. Like if you were, you know, wanting to do something really cool. And it's all about persuasiveness. You know, she was talking about flames burning feel the burn. Yep. Okay. Pexels and Upsplash are two other sites. Good. Good to know. Yeah, keep it like be original with it, you know, make it really interesting. So think about the idea, what you want to say, what you want to come across, and then the imagery goes with that, how you want to persuade the person, because you can persuade them in a lot of different ways. Think about back in your graphic design classes, if you had those different persuasive techniques to use. It could be very fun. So it's really up to you on what you want to do. Now I went ahead, this is kind of like a cooking show. I went ahead and did this early so I have an idea in my mind. I already have a concept that I actually have been thinking about before if I were ever to start something of my own, like my own business or whatever, something that I dream about. And that could be something that you want to tap into too for this. So I decided to do, let me see if I can find the image in here. For this, because I'm doing the Fit Me magazine, and I decided to do a yoga inspired. Oh, this is the image that I found. And in my mind, I was thinking, how cool would it be? And it might exist out there probably. How cool would it be to have a mobile yoga class that you can pick up anywhere? You know, you won't have necessarily a studio, but like a place where you meet. Now, I'm sure that they have that, you know, somewhere, but that's kind of where my idea existed here. Yoga on the go. I love it. That's a perfect headline there. But this is the image I was inspired by. Now, notice this is a landscape image. So if I use this, you know, as a full page, full bleed image, I just have to make sure I'm downloading the higher res option. So I'm going to download this one here on the very end, this one. That way it's large enough that I can place it in there. There you go, in the old hippie bands. I love it. Okay, so that being said, that's so funny. I started thinking of, okay, what could this be called? What could this brand be called? And what could my headline be? And all this stuff is coming through my head, and I'm, you know, jotting down this information. This is the design process that I'm not showing you that you guys should be going through. I'm just doing the quick, this is how I came up with it. So I go much faster. You guys should be taking this step by step a little bit more and process like I did originally when I did this. Okay, so go, once you're ready to kind of experiment with your layout, go to your page 8. This is your page 8. This is where the back cover will be. If you have a folio page number down here, make sure that you're dragging your none master page that doesn't have any type of master page, you know, there's nothing on it. Drag this all the way down and drop it on page 8. That way it eliminates any folio. There you go. I like that, see? Christina's coming up with all kinds of good ideas here. All right. So that's so funny. See, we can all inspire each other. How cool would it be to have that included in the discussion as far as like having ideas, like the process of your ads too? That would be really cool. All right, so as we go forward here, I'm gonna decide on my my logo, but before I do that, I know I'm gonna use that image that I just downloaded as a full page ad. Now you don't have to do this, you can, don't think that you have to emulate what I'm doing, I'm just showing you how I would do it for my magazine. So you don't have to do a full page. You have to do a full page ad, but you don't have to do a full bleed, is what I'm saying. And let me go find my, just lost it here. Hold on, guys. There you go. You can sketch, definitely. Hold on one second. Didn't have the image available here and I didn't download it, so I'm gonna have to go back to, yeah, this is crazy. There we go. Okay. It's taking me a while here. Sorry, guys. Demo. Okay, here's the demo. I meant to put this on my desktop. I forgot. All right. Here we go. So here's my yoga girl, and I already saved it as a TIFF. So I already took it into Photoshop, resized it, did everything that I needed to do. And I'll show you that in a second if you don't know how to do that. Yeah, there you go. Any way you can make money. Because this is a horizontal image, landscape image, it's going to be wider than it is tall. So I'm going to have to make sure that this image is center, because that's kind of what I'm basing this off, is being centered. And think about yoga as being centered. So I'm going to move her a little bit to the right here. A little bit here. I just use my margin guide to show that she's centered. And I like this image because it goes with the whole idea of, you know, yoga on the go, like you said. Okay, the next thing I'm gonna do is, you can either do the logo, completely up to you, or the headline. I'm gonna do the headline because I already kind of thought of something in my mind. I'm gonna put it up here. Make sure you have enough contrast. Make this white. And then choose a typeface that's gonna be appropriate for your ad. You know, it goes with it, it unifies. I already picked out this font that I downloaded. It's called Conforta. I thought it was pretty cool. So I'm going to use Nothing Gets in the Way of My Yoga Mat as my headline. But I do like yoga on the go. That's pretty cool. Now I kind of want to change it. Now I'm using the typeface. It's, you know, obviously the headline is bigger. make sure it's readable. I have a little bit of issue here where the white sky is. So what I can do is I can either take this image back into Photoshop and get rid of that by just extending some of the trees over this way, or I can give us just a slight drop shadow. I'm going to pull this back a little bit in distance so it's not so far apart from the letters, and I'm going to drag down the opacity a little bit so that it's not so obvious. It's like a tint. Yeah, I love it. It's centered. I'm going with this whole centered alignment idea because, you know, obviously we're talking about yoga, and it's always good to be centered in yoga. So why not center the type for that whole look and feel too? Now, I have a headline. It's always good to kind of put a subhead in there just explaining what this is about. So I'm going to have smaller because it should be kind of like in a hierarchical order here. Most important to, and I'm not saying that this is not as important, but you want to scale it down so the viewer knows what to look at first, second, and third. So join our traveling yoga studio. So it's basically telling the viewer what this is about without being too vague. And a quick one sentence. And a quick and one sentence here. And I'm making it a little bit smaller. Like I said, you can also put a drop shadow in this. There's my clock. And I'll show you how you can kind of adjust this to the image once I take it into Photoshop to show you how to resize it and change the color mode. How you can change this so that, say if you have areas where it's like white like this and the type you want it to be white on white and it's not readable, you can kind of fix that really easily. But this is the headline. Nothing gets in the way of my yoga mat. What the heck are they talking about? I see this lady here. She's on an open road in the middle of the woods. Join our traveling yoga studio. Right to the point to what this is. So this is a studio. This is a service. Now I have to think of the name of the brand. And I'm going to come up with Yogi. Let's see here. So be creative with this. I kind of like this. This is where I like it. It's like so open to what you guys want it to be instead of you given the brand already. Yogi Travelers.com. I think that's what I had. So you can have it as a word mark. You could have it as a combination mark. You can be very simple with this. I'm going to add just a mark to this so that's a little bit more interesting. It's right on her butt here. But it's going to be simple, and I'm going to do it in InDesign. But feel free to do this in Illustrator and import it. But because I want to keep this really simple, and I know I can do this in InDesign, I'm just going to do it here. So I'm just going to kind of play around with the circles here. And then align them. And I'm just kind of centering these now. Something very simple. Make sure it balances well together. And that it's right for the actual company. I'm going to make this less bold. Oh, this isn't even my font. I'm going to keep this the Comforta font. Let's see if we can do bold. Okay, why do I have a line there? What is going on? Almost looks like I have a roll line in there. Let me check my styles. I saw a lot of this with you guys too, your style sheets. A lot of you guys have roll lines accidentally placed on in your body copy. There we go. That's the culprit. It's setting it as folio 2. So I just want to go ahead and see basic format, and then I'm just going to go, just make sure you don't have anything selected in your styles. That was my problem there. So change it back to normal, and then it should be good to go. All right, and then the same thing here. Didn't notice it. And I noticed that that's something that you guys did too, some of you guys with your body copy, so you can see kind of how I did the same thing. It's easy to do. If you already have it selected in your styles and then you go ahead and create this, that's where it comes into play. Let's see, we're gonna do 24, and then this is the same thing here. It can be kind of a pain in the butt. You can create a new style for this, but since it's a one-page ad, I would just, you know, I wouldn't worry about it really. Okay, pull this down a little bit. So it could be as simple as this. This is nice and simple because, you know, obviously you don't want it to be too cluttered. You can add body copy to this. Like say, I would say if you had body copy to this, it would be very simple, like a, I don't know, let's see what I would do here. Almost like a simple, either 1 column or 2 column text box here. Let me just fill in some placeholder text so you can at least see. How I did this. 12-point type, let's do like 10, 14. This might not even be readable, but at least you can kind of see. That's even a lot of type, but you know, you can do one even less than this, like that. Probably keep it simple. Then I would probably move this so that this becomes a different position. It goes above and maybe even up here, depending on readability, if you decide to put in text. So it's all on what you kind of want to do in your layout. If you want to add text in here, I don't have much of her. I want to go too far up here. Let's do that simple. That's placeholder text, by the way. It's just like Greek copy, so you don't really understand what it is. It's just in there for show. And then, see, that's getting kind of tight there. But you do something like that where, probably like one more line up. The body copy isn't, you know, a ton of copy. So this would be like 6 lines of text here. But you can keep it super simple too, like kind of how I have it here, where it's just, you know, a headline, subhead, as long as it's not too vague and you're describing what this is, I'm fine with that. And then you have a call out. Mine just happens to be, the call out is the actual name too, because it has a web address included in that. So it kind of works twofold in that way. And there's a drop shadow in there. Okay. Any questions about that? Pretty simple, right? One thing I want to make mention too, I'm going to open up this image that I just placed in here in Photoshop. I'm going to show you how to resize this for print. And this is what you should be doing even with your images in your magazine as well. I just never really got to it. All right, so here's Photoshop. So once you're ready to place all your images, and it's always good to do this last because you never know when you're going to resize your images within your articles. But because we already know in our full page design that our ad size is always going to be the same, then we can go ahead and let's see here. We can go ahead and do this. Hold on one second, guys. Try to log in here so I can grab this image. I already changed the image as far as the resolution, so I want to download it again so you guys can see the process here. Give me 1 second. So I'm downloading this from Pixabay. And the original JPEG, I'm going to save to my desktop. And I'll show you how to adjust this. Okay, so in Photoshop, go ahead and open that JPEG that you downloaded. The original image. Layers. There we go. Unlock this layer. Okay, then you're going to go up to Image in Photoshop, Image Size. This is a current space is 57.1 megabytes. That's pretty big because it's a high-res image. Yeah, 350, yep. Yeah, so the resolution should be at 300. That's perfect. The only thing that I need to adjust here, and if I go back to my, let's go back to my InDesign. Go ahead and check your image size. So right now I'm using this at 8.75 by 11.25. So really, I want to make sure the height is the same. We'll do 11.85. And as long as resample is checked, everything else changes in this. So it really didn't change too much because the height is really what I needed because this is more of a landscape image. If you have more of a portrait image, that's where it will become more significant of a change. And click OK. Once I do that, everything's good. I need to convert the color mode because right now this is set in RGB. And because this is going to be a print ad, we need to go up to image mode and choose, instead of RGB, we need to convert it to CMYK. Click OK. And then we can save it as a Photoshop TIFF file. Now this is going to be a large file. I just have to do the girl. Because it's high res, just kind of keep that in mind. It's going to be too big. And that's okay for print, but for uploading to Canvas, you might have some issues. Hopefully not. But I just want to kind of make sure you guys know that. Okay, I'm going to go right back into InDesign, and what we're going to do is we're just going to swap this out. So you can either do another replace and swap it out that way. I already had a high res in there, so I'm good. But I just wanted to show you that's how you would replace it. Now, we're going to be doing the somewhat different when we convert these to a web ad. Your color space won't be CMYK, it will be RGB. Your size ratio will be different as well. So just to give you a heads up, the size ratios for your next project, which would be assessment 3, let's go ahead and look at those size ratios in Photoshop, just so you know what you're dealing with size-wise. So you have a 300 width by 600 pixels. I'll show you what that looks like. So you're going to create the first full page ad, and then you're going to change it to this size eventually here. The next one is 336 by 280. And I know you can't see what I'm doing here, but give me 1 second. I'm just going to show you these, and I'll show you this tomorrow. So we'll get into these details. I just wanted to show you the ratio, the size ratio. Okay, so this is the first size. So you're going to convert that full page ad into a space like this. And then the second one is going to look like more square. So keep that in mind when you're designing your actual ad, that it can, it's versatile enough to be, scaled and fit into those sizes. Always thinking ahead. All right, the last part of this is just saving this as a PDF. What you can do, and I can show you here real quick, you can go, I'm in InDesign, go ahead and go to File, and do smallest file, Adobe Presets. And we're gonna save this to the desktop. And I'm gonna name this Assignment 3, save it to the desktop. And this is where here, you wanna select where it says Pages, page number 8. You don't have to worry about spreads because it's a full page ad. And click Export. And that way I won't be looking at all of your other pages. We got chats here, hold on. Oh yeah, I love this. I have stuff on there. It's a good place. Yep. When you're done, let me share my desktop here. Creating your PDF, make sure you open it just to view it. Make sure it looks good. I saved it. Oh, saved it to my desktop here. There we go. Oh, I wanted to show you how to change that real quick too. The little trees. Forgot about that. Oh, cool. Yep. Yeah, I have, I'll look up my link here in a second. I wanted to show you here real quick how you would do those bushes. That's just using Photoshop. You go back here. If you wanted, say you're having readability issues and you wanted to play around with that, it's real easy if you have, especially like a real abstract, fuzzy background like I do, like depth of field showing here, little layers. I'm in Photoshop and I'm going to take my rubber stamp tool here, make it a little bit bigger. If you're familiar with this tool, you can actually rubber stamp areas and just paste them on top. If you hold down the Alt Option key, you can get a sample close by holding Alt and Option and then grabbing that over. So right where I'm having the issues are, let me see here, in this area here. So I'm just going to kind of pull over some more. And this is something that, nobody will really tell that you did because it's so abstract right here and fuzzy looking. You can't really tell the leaves on here, right? So if you're having visibility issues, sometimes this can help. Okay, I'm going to save this real quick. I probably would change the opacity a little bit. Let's go back to now watch this area here change. Go to my links. My thing's in the way. Hold on, guys. I hate that when that happens. All right, so I want to just kind of relink this. Desktop. All right, so you can see where the N and the T are. It gets a little bit better in there. Get it? So that's how you could fix like stuff like that. Any questions about any of that? If I can find my Society 6. Now you have me all into looking at that link here. Okay. Yeah, you're good. You know what? Interesting. Looks like I don't have that. I should have the account. Let me see here. Ah, looks like they got rid of me on here. I had an account. They must have just got rid of me. I haven't used it for a while. But I was doing like, I used to have a Chiweenie. So I was doing like wiener dog. Here, I'll show you real quick because I just looked it up. Oops. I was doing this kind of stuff, but I wasn't fully invested in it. I was in my Chiweenie world. It looks like they deleted me though. Interesting. You figured it out, Raymond? Okay. All righty. Yeah, it looks like they got rid of me. Interesting. What in the world? That makes me sad. I was using, what's the other one too? Starts with a Z. Oh, Zazzle. Zazzle's. I actually sold a lot on there. I didn't make a lot of money, but I did sell a lot of stuff. Zazzle's another one. Kind of interesting. As we get off topic right here. So that is what you have to do for your project for this week, which I think you guys will have a lot of fun with. Just place it in, like I said, in your magazine, place it in there and then save it out as a PDF. And that's the only thing you should be sending me. I shouldn't be looking through all your pages again, just page 8 as a PDF. Does anybody have any questions or want to go over anything? Now that we're at the end here. Raymond's good. Okay. All right. Teespring. Yeah. Is that another one? I've never heard of that one. There's so many different ones out there. Interesting. All right, guys. Well, you guys have a wonderful day. Thanks for coming, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget to get the discussions going. Revise your projects before adding them to the discussion. Okay? All right. See you guys tomorrow, hopefully. Have a good one. Thanks, guys.